Are you ready to learn how to grow your entrepreneurial mindset so that you can not just survive, but thrive now and into the future? This is your show. Welcome to PossibLaw. Let's get into it. Gabe, thanks for joining us on PossibLaw today. I am super excited to have you. I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you twisted my arm, and now I'm here.
It's how it goes sometimes, right? You ask friends or friends of friends, hey, can you please come on the show? And they're like, all right, fine, sounds good. But hopefully it'll be an entertaining conversation. I don't think I've had a bad one so far. I always love to start these conversations with more than the business professional. And so I always start with helping our audience get to know you a little bit. And so I like to ask, do you have kids? What do you like to do outside of work that, helps power you through the day?
Outside of work, I think we're deeping into my past when I'm talking about outside of work. But I'll give you a few examples. I've built over 20 gaming PCs, where you buy all the pieces from Newegg and you put them together. I am a late bloomer in like super DIY everything. So since AI, I've been trying to do as much as humanly possible by myself. So I installed my own dishwasher in my new house, installed
Wow.
my own stove, repaired my own heating system. Uh, I talk about this a lot, but I'm very proud of replacing the radiator in my Ford F-150 as well.
Nice.
And I love battle card games. So like I used to play Magic the Gathering, and now the only video game I ever have any time for, like my PS5 and my Xbox are rotting in my basement, but I play Hearthstone,
Hmm.
the WoW card game, and I play it like if like my kids all like hated me and moved on, my wife moved on, like I would try to go be a professional battle card player.
Okay, that is fascinating. So what is it about the battle card game that is so sort of like draws you to it so much?
I mean, it's a dopamine engine built around solving simple math problems quickly, right? So, like, it's a brain game that, like, where you get to say, I beat you at the end.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, obviously we're in this world where the tech providers figured out that you could gamify things and
Mhm.
they then built their algorithms around that. And now we're sort of finally starting to realize that. It's actually interesting. I was talking to a friend yesterday about how we're seeing a trend of people's engagement in social media drop pretty much every quarter for the last 2 years, and it continues to drop. And then you layer in all this like AI generated content. People are mostly like, "Oh, this is finally a waste of my time. Like this, we've gone too far." And I think we're moving into these worlds like this, where it's like real stimulation in a more sort of meaningful way. And again, that can be video games, it can be something like this card game, but I think there's like all these other things that people are going to be interested in, including podcast, because you gain something beyond the like swipe and click. And I think it's an interesting thing. So I was like asking about it. How did you get into gaming? Is this something you did as a kid? Did you build a rig when you were like, 11, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I went to a Waldorf school, and I was in a household that had no television. So like I had to sneak over to my friends' houses to watch cartoons on Saturday. Like I had to like sneak into movie theaters to see movies. So it was like I was media starved, and the one outlet I was allowed to have was computing. And so my parents I worked as a sailing coach. Like I love to sail, and that's what I did in the summers. I had like two me's. There was like this nerdy me at school, and this like who I thought was this cool me who would sail boats during the summers. And I would always save half of my money from every summer I worked as a sailing coach, and I would buy a new computer every year with that half of my salary. And I just started wanting to maximize the dollars. So it was like I was buying Dells, like customizing them on the website at
Yeah.
first. And then I was like, I want to get more bang for my dollar and I want to level up. So I moved on to buying them from Newegg and building them, or buying them from CompuServe or CompuCity or computers.
Yeah.
There was Circuit City. There was a bunch
Circuit
of like,
City. I remember
what
Circuit
was
City.
it? Yeah. So
Uh,
it was just like the only outlet I had for media. So it was like I got like really obsessed with it.
Yeah, I can see some of that. You know, my wife and I have been very careful about our 5-year-old daughter's ability to screen time. Basically, until she was 3, she got zero screen time, and now we've layered in movies and stuff. And you know, like any little kid, she's starting to ask for more of it, and we're trying to figure out how you get that in. One of the things I've been telling her is like, video games. I think video games can be a lot of beneficial, and they're stimulating in mostly good ways if you find the right ones. And so I think it's an interesting thing. But I do love this idea of building because I'm a sort of builder at heart too. Like I've always liked using my hands. When I was growing up, we like rented places because we couldn't afford anything else, and my mom grew up before the HGTV thing. Her dad flipped houses. Like that's what she did. So
Oh,
she was the help. She was the GC, right? And
yeah.
so she taught me a lot of it. She would build like random walls in our house and like all kinds of stuff. And so I learned. And so similar to you, like I love using my hands. I love building stuff. And so I've tried to do that with my daughter too, which is like this is how you use a saw. This is how you build something. This is the idea of why connecting things together is important. And even in a computer, I think that is also part of it. And it's actually something I've been thinking about in this kind of opportunity of AI and where things are going is how do you create more builders? Because I think that skill is really going to be really important as we sort of progress, having more entrepreneurial ability, right? And so it's an interesting question. And so, you know, you have kids, you understand the value of coding and software and all the rest of it. How have you managed or have you started to figure out like where the intersection is for raising your kids and like giving them software and all that stuff?
So my daughter's almost 3, and my son's 16 months old. So I allow like there's certain content they can watch on YouTube, but it's like I'm gonna be in the room, right? Um, we use ChatGPT together, but it's normally like as a way to interact with the physical world.
Mhm.
So, for instance, yesterday my daughter's bringing me her little micro dinosaurs and asking me what they are. And for the ones I don't know, I just take a picture and ask
Yeah.
ChatGPT what it is.
Yeah.
And it's pretty flawless at telling me what the name of the dinosaur is. So, like we'll do that to inform. We'll use AI in a sense to inform our learning in in reality based off of things physical objects she has. And then we also use an app to help us come up with ideas to build with Legos. So like
Mhm.
I've got an app that'll like scan a bunch of loose Legos and like give you designs. So she'll be like, I want to make a cat. We can scan things on the floor and it'll tell us how to make a cat with what's there.
That's really cool. I love the application of using things in a way that maybe isn't always obvious. You know, it's funny. I always joked around my secret power before ChatGPT launched was this you could use vision models inside Google, right? Like if you had the app. This is like 4, 5, 6 years ago, right?
Mhm.
And you know, people were like, "Where'd you find that?" It's like a $4,000 lamp, and I was like, I used this app, and I found it at Wayfair for 9.99. Now everybody is like, "Oh, these vision models," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty sweet, right?" Or even what you were talking about is like you try to fix something, right? Your HVAC. Before you
Yeah.
Googled it, you did your best. Now you like take a picture and you ask a question. And it's like, oh yeah, move the lever that way. And you're like, oh, okay, fantastic. I actually think it's also an interesting thing because part of the thing with the whole AI thing is people that understand more programmatically how to leverage it or really the full skill set of what it can do tend to be like you and they use it in sort of every part of their world, right? And others tend to use it as just this chatbot. And so I think it's also interesting for people to listen and hear about other ways to use it. And a lot of times personal is an opportunity right now to play with it and see how it goes and see where it comes from. Before we get into like all the AI stuff though, one part of that that I have used it for that I know is important to you is kind of health and how you use that in your world, right? And so I've seen some of your posts on LinkedIn and I'm curious how you have embedded that kind of in your own world. Cause like I'm similar, like I have an Aura, I have an Apple Watch 2, and I've started to use the Aura has like a lab thing where you can take a picture of your food and like all that
Mhm.
stuff. Right. And so how did you get into that and like why, I guess, and how have you been using it?
Yeah, I mean the origins of health stem from being a sailing coach, right?
Mm.
So in my early 20s, I went from being like a camp counselor to like really trying to help kids excel in competition. And that meant they had to train. That meant that we had to think about their wellness holistically and peak performance. And I was lucky enough to be coaching in Clearwater, Florida, at a community sailing center that had one of like America's greatest youth coaches coaching there as well, this private team. And so I got to like kind of see the level of input and effort he was putting into their training, which included their meal plans, their like workouts for them. We're talking about 9, 10-year-olds here. Their workouts, their sailing drills, feedback loop. So it's like that's when I got like the foundation of like if you want to get better at something, you should record it and watch it and analyze how you're doing it so that you can actually get a feedback loop on how to improve it. And that kind of waned though. Like, when I started my first company and I was married and I was feeling the angst of adulthood and responsibility, I drifted from health and self-care and stuff. And so like the second coming of my love of health and leverage technology was in my late 20s after I peaked at like 230 pounds and uh, it was when my waist hit like 38 inches and I was having sleep apnea. I was just really uncomfortable. And I was like, I'm not going to be that person that just lets himself go. Like, and so I kind of dove into macros then and thinking about like how I eat and like I was always in the gym, but trying to get more consistent. Like I used to lift to get bigger, right? I used to like bro lift in college, like bro, let's deadlift, let's bench press, and then I started to think about more like heart health and so like the non-aesthetic stuff that matters, right? So I started running. That's when I started getting into long distance running and cardiovascular health and hits and so yeah. So it's like been a progression. And then having kids, like I got the dad pooch. Like I don't know if you know this, but like when you're around your children and you're around your wife, like while she's pregnant and while they're around you, your testosterone is smashed. Like your natural testosterone release will diminish, especially if you sleep in the same room with your kids and your wife. So it's like there's a lot of extra stuff you have to do to build yourself back up. So that fasting started entering my life in my mid 30s because I like exercise and food alone wasn't really doing it. And also I was like I didn't like just eating super clean. So it's like fasting was the only way I could stay the same size but not always eat clean. And so yeah, so technology has just really improved the feedback loop of how I self-educate. I'm lucky that I work at Exos, like one of the leading research companies on human performance. So I get a lot of inspiration from the research studies we do and stuff we publish internally to our coaches. But yeah, like for instance, I used to take melatonin. Like 2.5 years ago, I was struggling with sleep. Kids, problem. I needed to go to sleep fast. I was using melatonin, and it really stopped working. And I was like, I want to understand, like, melatonin is a hormone, right? And like, but I produce it, right? But why do I have to take it? If I can produce it, why do I have to take it? And then, in like 10 minutes, I learned the entire amino acid chain of what builds, what builds melatonin. And it's tryptophan to 5-HTP to serotonin to melatonin, right? So then it's like, and then I would have been like, oh, that's cool, but I can ask AI, what can I eat now to improve my natural production of that? And then I can say, in what order, in what schedule do I have to do it during the day? And then all of a sudden, like, my natural melatonin, like, I have not taken melatonin in years. Like, I fall asleep 10, 15 minutes laying down now. Like, but it used to take me an hour, like, before I taught myself all this.
I love that. I've never been like a huge weightlifter. I'm a sports person. I played every sport imaginable since I was little, right? And I've always enjoyed that. And it was kind of my natural way to stay within a certain weight range. And then just like you, as I got older, I had to start really thinking about, less alcohol, less random foods, try to be more consistent about, working out and all those kinds of things. And figuring out things that help me. And similar to you, I have a little girl, right? And she went through this series of sleep regressions and trying to figure out like, what do I do about that, right? And that's part of the reason I did like the aura thing and just better tracking my sleep, because I realized like I would have days where I was like dragging, right? And what happened? Like, what was the difference? I felt like it was the same thing last night, right? And then you could see like, oh crap, okay, so that spike caused this thing. I need to make sure I'm more consistent about whatever. I do think that ability though is not natural to everybody. I'm similar to you that like I just have this drive to learn sort of. And so when I want to figure something out, I just do whatever it takes to figure that thing out. But it's not natural to everybody. And it's kind of part of this sort of growth mindset thing, how you use things. Where did that come from for you? Is that something your parents instilled in you? How did you get that growth mindset?
So I mean, I can give my parents some credit for sure. As like for instance, my mom went back and got a master's degree in puppet theater in her 40s, just because she loved puppet theater so much and Lorca. And so like intellectually, my parents have always been really good at like the pursuit of knowledge. They're both attorneys, by the way. Both worked in public service. Um, my dad ran the Capital Defense Division of the state of Maryland, and my mom was a juvenile defense attorney for 30 years. But when it comes to like physical health, they both struggled. So it's like it was that counterpoint where it's like I saw how much they struggled, so I didn't want that. So that's been the like so seeing them struggle with weight, struggle with nutrition, struggle with sleep, that counterpoint of like I don't want to go through that was like the motivation for me. Um, but yeah, I have to say like going to a Waldorf school, definitely I like starting when I was in kindergarten, definitely affects that like creative mindset or scientific mindset, because we weren't like we didn't get tested, like we were taught like, it was like skill-based learning, like learning how to when I by the time I was in eighth grade I could sew my own clothes, knit my own, I could cook my own food, I could farm my own food, I could I could make my own pot holder, I could build a shelter out of wood, like I could kill a squirrel with a trap. Like they taught us the most random stuff. But like long term, it's really been beneficial, even if like my freshman year of high school, there was a little gap. Like I feel like maybe um, on the core subjects of, like English based modern education system.
Yeah, my wife and I also struggle with the whole school system thing. Like we have our daughter in Montessori. We love it. It's very like, she's learning all the stuff, same stuff, right? Like she can make food and do laundry and like, she's 5, right? Like, but it's also not like she doesn't view it as a chore. She wants to do it. She wants to, it's her work. It's part of her life. And that's so empowering from our viewpoint. And then you look at kind of public school systems, and we have phenomenal public schools where we live, but it's still very straightforward, right? It's designed for a system 100 years ago and test based, and right. And I always told my wife, like, I did fine in school, but I figured out pretty early I could game the system a little bit, right? Like, oh, I remember once being told like that's the right answer, but you didn't show me enough of like how you did it, so I'm gonna give you an F. And I was like, wait, hold on, like this doesn't make any sense, right? And then I just learned, okay, great. I'm gonna game the system. I'm gonna do just enough to get my B or B plus or whatever the hell it is, and I'm gonna move on. Anything that was skill based, I was all in. I loved it, right? Like in high school, I finished my science credits early, and they were like, okay, you can go next semester math physics. And I was like, why would I do that? There's an aerospace program. I can learn to fly, right? Great. I'm going to do that. And that's kind of how I've always viewed it. And so as we raise our daughter, I'm very much with you, is like, how do you instill that, but still within the structures of what we have in the school system we have? And I don't have an answer, but I do think it's something interesting to talk about, especially in this like age of constant technological innovation and like needing more of that ability to do stuff. I also am curious for you, like, has that skill based learning upbringing that you sort of empowers you, helped you in this like age of like AI constant change, or
For
is
sure.
that was just natural because you have like a software background?
It's probably both. I mean, like both. Look, I studied computer science, but I wasn't really good at the math part of computer science. And this is back when we're on Unix servers and you're building compilers like before the web. And so I struggled with all the hard math, like the really hard math, like Calc 3, matrices. So that's why I didn't get a computer science major. Um, so I mean, it did add a foundation, but I promise you, I literally learned everything I needed to know for my first startup from Google. Like Google was the first AI, right? Googling things and not getting it synthesized for you, just reading how to do things. Like even when I was doing like I guess what I love about LLMs is like they kind of copy how I used to write papers, right? So when I used to write papers is I would be given a subject and I would read all about the subject and I would copy and paste a paragraph I thought was compelling from all different types of sources, keep the source, and then I would just take each of those paragraphs and I would reorder them into what I thought was the argument I was trying to make from what I learned. And then I would just go and paraphrase the whole thing into my voice and turn it in. It's like, is it plagiarism? I don't think it was. I mean, I never got called out for it, but it was like a structured form of creating my writing. I never in my whole life have been good at like blank page, like inception of this beautiful document that's structured to make sense. So, I mean, I got a huge level up when I could go from brain dump to something that was more readable for sure.
Yeah, I even think even that shows a little bit of your own upbringing, skills-based learning, because I think a lot of people get stuck in the is that wrong? Is that plagiarism? Am I doing something? Like I'm supposed to do it this way instead of just like again, outcome-based, like what are you trying to achieve and go and do that thing. And I'm fascinated in talking to accomplished people on like how they got where they got and why they got. And I think everybody has different things, but I think one of the threads that goes through it is this ability to sort of always look at everything almost from a first principles standpoint and be like, so what if that's not the way you're supposed to do it? I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to try, I'm going to keep learning. And so I think that for anybody listening is just a reminder that, you know, be a little skeptical of everything everybody tells you and try to do new things. Uh, I want to talk a little bit, since you raised it, about kind of how you got where you are now, right? So you went to school and college and all the rest of it. You know, I generally it's not that college is bad. I think college is good. I went to college. I just think we're in this age where, again, skills based, you can do lots of things with no college or anything. It's just much more about your own impetus to get there. And so I'm more interested in how you got where you got. And I know was it after college you started your first company, or what is the genesis of like, you graduate college and then you start getting into your career? How did that begin?
So I mean, I graduated from college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had been teaching sailing since I was 10 years old, 12 years old, getting paid as an assistant, like all the way through to coaching kids in New Zealand and in Long Island. And like I was a little bit of a Peter Pan. I was like, I have no idea what the next step is. So again, so I moved to New Zealand for a year and I taught sailing at a school there.
It's amazing.
And it was really love that drove me to like have to be more. Like I had fallen in love with this girl, she wanted to get married, and I was like, there's no way I can make enough money to support a wife and a family with my sailing skills. I was peaking career wise there, and so it was like that impetus of what skills do I have and what can I do, and I've always been a bit of a self starter, and I was like, first thing I'm gonna do rather than go apply to jobs is I'm gonna ask my dad and mom about like the Rolodex of every lawyer they know, and I went out and I cold called and dropped in on every law office of like 200 of their colleagues and just undercut their IT guys. I was just like, hey, whatever computer guy you have that's like 50 and charging you $60 an hour, like I'll do it for 25. And that worked really well. And I got like in a couple months, I had like 50, 60 clients. And then my first thing I did was a huge tech refresh cycle. Like I was like Best Buy triple platinum. I bought over $250,000 worth of new computers and servers and technical equipment printers for a bunch of lawyers. And then the next year was like the big proliferation of electronic evidence in the federal court system. So all these law firms that I was doing IT for all started bringing me, a stack of 30 DVDs or like an external hard drive with, 200 gigabytes of PDFs on them. And very quickly, the most difficult thing they were getting was audio intercept files from drug conspiracies because, the Patriot Act had happened. We started pointing the lens of PRISM onto American citizens. And that kind of led me down my first path into my first company, which was the GLS Litigation Services that we then converted into CaseKey, the software company, a few years later. But yeah, so it was like very quickly just electronic discovery, e-discovery was what everybody needed help with. And so just it was like going to my dad's and mom's friends, becoming their trusted technical person, and then the first company was born by the wave of time and the government starting to have massive amount of data in their cases.
I'm not surprised that you decided to jump into the entrepreneurial opportunity that saw before you. Again, I think one of the things I like to talk about on this show is that you don't have to like be entrepreneurial in a sense like start a company necessarily. Just think entrepreneurially in how you do things. And I know that can be more difficult in a corporate setting, but experiment, try stuff, see what works, right? And sometimes it'll fail, but you'll learn and you keep going. And so it's not surprising in knowing you a little bit that that's kind of where you went. And he just went door to door and said, "Hey, I can do that. I'll do it for cheaper." Simple, right? Seems simple, seems common sense, but a lot of people get really stuck on that, right? And as you progressed in that job, that new company, what made you guys decide you wanted to try to convert that into kind of like a software play in CaseKey?
Well, we were growing, so I started recruiting. Like my best friend from university, like he also went to New Zealand with me, and I was like, "Hey, dude, come back! Like smartphones are cool. Like there aren't any smartphones in New Zealand. Like building ships." He was like a mechanical engineer. I was like, "Building ships is boring. Come build software." And so I like rode him for like 7 months and got him to come move back. And a few other friends, I got them all together because we were growing, and this it was basically the work was bad, it was not fun to do. Like when like the needle in the haystack searching for the one FBI 302 that might have something in it that could help exonerate your client or sever them from the case. It was just like we realized like we were getting carpal tunnel from all the typing and searching and clicking and filtering and eventually then like the SQL queries we were writing. So it was also kind of the progression is we wanted to do the job better. So we were like, and also the data was getting bigger. So it's like I couldn't search all that data in like a PDF anymore. And so I needed to move on to something more robust. So we taught ourselves how to set up our own SQL database. And then we were running that locally. And then we were writing queries in it. And we're like, why are we always writing these queries by ourselves? Like, couldn't we write scripts that could write these queries? And then we're like, all the data we're always putting into these queries come from Pacer. Like, couldn't we just pull this data from Pacer and then kick off those scripts? And then, and then in the end, it was basically for our own sake. We also for scale, we couldn't, the amount of requests we had to do the scraping was greater than we could do by hand. So it was like this feedback loop of people like demand for it and then like our own mental health of like not wanting to do it by hand all the time. That kind of what led to the conversion.
Uh, so you start CaseKey. How long did you do that, and what happened?
Oh, it's a tragedy. It's a
Tragedies are
true
great stories.
tragedy. Um, Case Key, as a standalone thing, lasted about 5 years, and we didn't we did it was all self funded. Like we were profitable from day one. We doubled our revenue year over year for 4 years. Um, and we were making enemies in the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the Postal Inspector Service, the U.S. Attorney's Office, because we were finding mistakes they were making. We were exonerating young men who were allegedly operating in illegal commerce, and like they started putting pressure on me. Like they threatened me with obstruction of justice in one case. Luckily, I had written a very good discovery transfer agreement that like protected me from what they said I did that was improper. I started showing up on the wiretaps like when I was consulting with defendants, and by law they were supposed to minimize any conversations with the defendant's defense team, their attorney, their experts, and they were still listening in on those calls and scraping that data. And then like I just started uncovering like some illegal conspiracies, like the U.S. government, like Snowden's Prism. We one time the U.S. Attorney's Office turned over a bunch of discovery, and they had forgotten to finish the redaction in Adobe, so all of the metadata was hidden behind the blackouts. And I was like, oh my God, guys, like I can't. I was a middleman. I can't turn this over to defense attorneys. We're going to expose all of your CIs to potential violence, death from this gang. Uh, but I was curious, why is the incepting CI not a human name? Why is it a string of numbers and letters? And no answer there. But then what happened is they turned over another case where they didn't properly redact everything, and I found again the incepting CI, confidential informant. That was like the cause for starting the investigation, was also another string, and that's when we started to piece together that like the contractors at Booz Allen Hamilton working for the NSA were given the purview to let the three-letter agencies know in the United States when they found an American citizen that possibly was committing illegal acts. And then they were setting up a fake confidential informant and a false parallel investigation and not disclosing any of this at all through the whole proceedings. So figuring that out and uncovering that made me even bigger target and my company. And then we also uncovered that they were using cell site simulators. The FBI had given cell site simulators to the Baltimore Police Department, and they were using cell site simulators they used them in over 5,000 convictions. And they did not disclose the use of it in the court proceedings as well. And they had an illegal agreement where the FBI had made them promise, and in a written agreement, not to disclose the use of the cell site simulators, even though that was against Maryland law to not disclose how they had like collected their evidence and their evidentiary procedure. So I then worked with the FPD like to try to help turn over some of those convictions. And I wrote motions in over 150 drug conspiracy cases.
Wow.
I testified as expert witness. One of the coolest stories, I think, from a nerdy perspective, was I was brought on in a state murder trial where the defendant was the husband and his wife was cheating on him with another man, and he came home early and he caught the guy, but the guy had called his mother right before, and was leaving her a voicemail at the same time that he pulled out his gun and shot him to death. And they were using that phone recording to like establish a number of shots. But we realized, I was like, I was working for defense, and I was like, the mic on iPhone 6s is only so powerful. How could it distinguish, the audio signal of a gunshot as compared to, say, slamming the mic like to its max level against something? So this was really fun because like I got to go and rent the gun, the exact same gun that they were using, shoot it, record it on an iPhone 6s, and then as well as smack the mic on the iPhone 6s and then compare the wavelengths of those two sounds, and was able to determine that the mic on the iPhone 6s is not powerful enough to distinguish between those two maxing sounds. And we got the voicemail thrown out, but the guy was found guilty, and he was guilty. So I was very glad to win the technical argument, but not also maybe exonerate a murderer.
I think that's fair. I think that is fascinating. When in a former life, I was a products liability defense lawyer, and we would hire experts to do stuff, and I would love to go to their labs because it was exactly like that, right? It would be like, we're gonna blow this up today and see what happens. Cool, right? And it was just really fun. And I think I'm also kind of, nerd. I like learning some of that like technical stuff and like why things work and, you know, the biomedical engineering of it or the chemical engineering of it. And I'd always get the like, why do you care? I'm like, I don't know. I think it's cool. Like maybe it'll be useful, maybe it won't be, but please teach me. That's fascinating. So CaseKey didn't work out for various reasons. Did you guys decide to just close it down then, or did you just decide to pivot for other reasons?
So look, like we just had some really unfortunate series of events. We were talking to a seed investor who was going to put in like $1 to $3 million, and this was right around the time that GitHub leaked everyone's secret keys in 2012, and our keys got leaked, and someone mined $40,000 worth of Bitcoin on my AWS account for 48 hours. And even though none of my S3 buckets or my EC2 instances were ever touched by the attacker, this was all the leverage the U.S. Attorney's Office needed to put us into security review as a vendor to the federal courts. And then what they did is they never read my 120-page paper on our security. And they just kept us in that limbo of under review, which means I couldn't take any more cases from them. We tried to pivot to be like a plaintiff firm tool, and we did work the Freddie Gray case, and that kept us in business for like 2.5 years. So we did host that evidence for that case, and then a few other private companies. But really, we ran out of money. We ran out of money as we were filling the feature gap with like things that everyone knows now, like what is it? Everlaw was like launching right around then. NextPoint, Disco, they all were just being born right then. Same as CaseKey was coming out right at the same time. But we only knew criminal because I grew up with 2 criminal defense attorney moms. I knew nothing about civil. I knew nothing about contractual law. I knew nothing about like civil litigation. I was like stuck over there in the criminal lit world. And we didn't make the pivot, so we ran out of money and we just decided to shut it down.
It happens. Again, I'm a big believer in the only thing that you shouldn't do is not try. And so at the end of the day, you learn a lot from failure. Some of it is unfortunate bad luck, and some of it's, you learn other things and you go forward, and that's fine. So CaseKey closes down, and then where do you go in your career?
To be honest, I went to coffee shops and I drew. I went into this weird like artist hole for almost 2 years where I hung out with a bunch of artists. I started a nonprofit called Art Monkeys Incorporated with a bunch of artists, and we were doing like the biz dev for young illustrators. So it's like they would be coming out of MICA or like Maryland Institute College of Art, and they would have amazing art and they'd have absolutely no way how to stop being a barista. So we would front them the cash to print, like get the whole set of their prints for their art, like mugs, t-shirts, as well as just like canvases. And then we had a distribution channel. We had relationships with a bunch of conventions because we found out like these visionary artists sold best at like Comic Cons and stuff. So we then would do 1 year of support where we'd like print all their stuff and we'd help them sell it at all the different conventions. And the goal was to get them enough money to replace their job at Starbucks or as a server.
That's fascinating. I think you're like the 7th or 8th person I've done this with that at some point in their career where they were trying to figure out what to do, sort of just went off almost off the grid, right? Like they just did something different, sort of non-linear. And I think that's a really important thing because I think too often people think that success is A, B, C, D, E, and it just isn't. It ends up being this weird mishmash of experiences and opportunities. And sometimes the best opportunities come from sort of like doing something very different. And I'm curious for you, so is drawing, was that always something that helped you kind of refocus? Is that why you felt that way, or?
It was just always a skill that I admired, right? And I drew a lot when I was younger, like in school, because Waldorf, you have to like design your own textbooks and illustrate your own textbooks and write the copy for your own textbooks. So I'd done a lot of drawing early in life, and then it just was something I was fascinated with and like admired. So like I had this opportunity, I had enough money, like right, that I like pursuit of income wasn't that important at the moment. So I sat in coffee shops and I consulted these artists and I watched them draw and I copied them and I tried to learn my own style and eventually organized them. Like, and then the cool part was that led to like this place called Creative Labs. So like Art Monkeys then became a tenant of this place called Creative Labs, which is a 40,000 foot warehouse full of art studios and like a giant wood shop and CNC machine that anyone could use, paint boxes, sound studio, a giant photo studio, and I ended up becoming like the program manager and like the so I collected all the rent and I put on the parties and I helped people book and use the studios and the Photoshop. And I got to work with Red Bull. So I got to work activate Red Bull Amafico. I got to work with like Red Bull's probably the coolest brand we got to work with. But like I mean we worked with I guess Kevin Plank and Under Armour too. So and also just like imagine like you get this creative brief. So like I mean I still use it today where I will get a creative brief and like it would be like to make 300 pillows for this activated cuddle space for people to come after and have a Red Bull. And so I'd have to like go find seamstresses and find people that would cut and I could buy the foam from and the cloth. And so yeah, again, it all converges, right? Like that kind of project management still like I utilize now.
I love that. So, how did you get back into legal then? Like, a lot of us, including me, is like, I want to get out, and it pull. I guess it does pull me back also. So maybe that's what happened to you. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, right afterwards, I swore I never would. But time and distance made the mind grow fonder. What I did do is after Creative Labs is I moved to Brooklyn and with Josh, my co-founder of CaseKey, we started another startup called Meal Kit. And this was on a scrape and aggregate play to build a controller of all the meal kit subscriptions in America. So we were all like meal kit guys. Like we would have two, three meal kits that were getting delivered and manage them was a real pain. And like we'd get boxes we thought we'd skipped or we thought we canceled a subscription and we didn't. So we kind of built it. We did a hackathon. We built it for ourselves. We're like, I want to have like a one button that says if I get my HelloFresh, then it automatically cancels my other two subscriptions. And then if I switch, it switches then for. And we released it on Instagram, and people were like, "Oh my God, we want this!" So we're like, "Okay, like I guess we'll make it a company."
and how long did you do that for?
So that was hard. Like we were used to making money, right? So Kasky, we were like making money hand over fist from the beginning. And we realized that the meal kit game had really, really low margins. And consumers, while they loved the tool we had built, they didn't want to pay for it. So the only route was like surveillance capitalism. So I remember I did get to sit down with the CEO of HelloFresh America. Didn't go anywhere, but we did sit down with Terrace Kitchen and we tried to sit down with Blue Apron. But, Terrace Kitchen gave us a shot like at like buying the consumer data for ad retargeting
Mhm.
because like if they were signed up for our controller, Terrace Kitchen could know exactly what they were eating from a competitor and exactly how long they had to change back to Terrace Kitchen and exactly what was on the menu so they could send like a targeted ad for the chicken for $5 off because they knew that you wanted chicken and bacon that week. Um, but Terrace Kitchen went bankrupt as well. $17 million in debt. We showed up one day, bike lock on the door. No way to get to talk to them. So that and like to be honest, like my sister was dying of cancer at the time.
Ah,
So like Meal Kit's failure allowed me to spend a lot of time at the end of her life, like just hang out with her, take care of her,
yeah.
like help her kids transition to like a life really early without a mom. So like I don't regret that it didn't work out, other than I wish I wish we could have made it. Oh, we could have gotten rich.
I mean, I always try to talk about anybody who asks me, like, how do you start businesses? How do you do stuff? I'm always like, look, money is obviously ideal. Like, everybody wants to make money. I think that's a reasonable place to be. But if your sole focus is like the exit, you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff. And frankly, I personally have always focused on like the day to day people that I enjoy working with, something meaningful to do. Usually that'll lead to money in my experience. Even if it doesn't work out, you gain something from it. You learn something, you made a connection, whatever it might be. And so, again, I always try to preach this idea of like there is no such thing as failure unless you didn't learn anything from it, right? Or you didn't gain anything
Yeah.
from it. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's failed. I would say, like, honestly, when things didn't work out, I normally get the bigger lessons from them,
yeah.
right? Like, so I'm happy now that it didn't work out, and I still use the skills I learned today in what I do.
Yeah, exactly. And so, okay, so meal kits and then legal drags you back. And how did you get where you are now?
So while I was doing meal kit, I was new to New York, right?
Yeah,
So I was going to these like tech meetups everywhere.
that's fun.
And I went to some random Google tech meetup somewhere in Manhattan. And, like I'm in my 30s, like meeting new people in your 30s, it gets more awkward, right?
Sure.
So you're
Yeah.
like trying to have those conversations like you're 22 years old and carefree. And, like it's just like you're not as, like you're more defined as a person. So like you're not clicking with as many people. And I like ran into this dude and he was like, he loved art and Burning Man and like all like that whole thing I did at the Creative Labs. He was a lawyer and then like one of the smartest lawyers I ever met. And he was into technology. He had been a product manager before he even went to law school. And so like three things clicking, I was just like, I'm never letting go of this guy. Like, so I ended up like installing his microwave, helping him paint his apartment. Like anything he invited me to, I was like, I'm there. And we got close. Like I got to know his whole group of friends. Like he was great. He like opened me up to like all of New York social life. Like I got to go out 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 into the valley and like camp out, in upstate New York,
Yeah.
and I got to go to parties I never been invited to. People out like these rich people who live their whole lives in New York. I never would have met without him. And that's my current general counsel, Mark Mandel. And like I applied. He got two jobs before the one at Exos where like they didn't have legal operations yet, and I was like applying to be a product manager at those companies, but like the direct connection wasn't there. And like I'd been a founder, not a product manager, and I found everyone who thinks I'd be good at product, then they go, well, you don't have like the education in how to write user stories. And I'm like, I'm an instinctual product guy, like I'm sure I can learn the technicals pretty quickly. But like, so that didn't work out. But then he came to Exos and they wanted to go from legal admin to legal operations. And yeah, now I knew him very well. He was like, look, I've interviewed like 30, 40 people. I haven't liked any of them. He's like, I think your technical background would like crush it here, especially with what I want to do. And I was about to have, like, and my wife was pregnant with our first kid. So it's like, and at the time I was running an Airbnb management company that I had started to pay the bills.
Sure.
Because I'd gone down this like right when my sister when Mealkit was crashing and Exos was starting to enter my life, I had gotten really into like building stuff. So I was getting paid to build decks on the back of people's houses, and that had always led to a bunch of rentals that ended up like the money was like you can make $100 an hour changing a light bulb and putting the batteries into someone's smart like door, and because they're off in Bali and they just need to keep like tenants coming through. So yeah, I was doing that, and like I wanted something like I was like I'm ready. Like I missed legal tech by then. I missed legal in general, and the stability got me.
I think, I always try to explain to people sometimes. I don't think there should be this almost shame. Like you did the entrepreneurial thing and then all of a sudden now you're working in a W-2 and like that shouldn't vibe or something. And I always try to explain to people like, the point of entrepreneurship, at least in my view, or being entrepreneurial, is you're just trying to solve problems. And sometimes that's you doing it, but it can be within a company. And sometimes in a larger organization, it's even more fun because there's less sort of like stress on top of you to like be the one that generates the revenue and all the rest of it. And if they give you some money or opportunity to play, you get some pretty cool stuff that you can do. And so I don't think, again, not that you clearly feel it, but I like to talk about that because I feel like a little bit people are like, oh, well, you must have failed and that's why you went back, instead of, no, I just made a different choice and that's okay. And that's a good thing, right? So you're at Exos and you have a GC who's technically minded, which is amazing. And yes, right? I mean, amazing. Also, as like a side note, we can talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but like I'm a big believer that like law and technology is colliding and it's sort of going to just meld into one right now. And anybody who doesn't think so is sort of missing the boat, but that's beside the point. So we'll talk about that in a moment. At Exos, talk to me about like what are you doing? Like, what does that vision look like?
I mean, so I took a humble position. I came in as the legal operations coordinator, right? And so I felt like I needed to prove myself. And so I kind of just leaned on those 20 years of what do you call it? An intrapreneur? I just went hard on being the intrapreneur. So I just won people over by saving them time or money. I was like, I'll clean my own room. So I tried to automate and make it very efficient my position. And then with all that extra free time, like I didn't go play spades on the corner. I was like looking for ways to save other people excess time and money. And an example, I was trying to own all of legal tech. So I went to IT and I was like, you guys do not need to take care of this. Like anything that's legal tech, I will own it. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just give it to me. So I took it from them and then we shared DocuSign with People Apps. And I started poking around everything in there and I found their automation for offer letters and for the agreements were going out in two separate envelopes. And I was like, if you send both of these in the same envelope, we're going to cut our bill in half because we pay per send. And so I like saved them like 15 grand, boom, just like in one line of code. And all of a sudden, like they trust me now, right? They're like, Gabe's got our back. Gabe's smart. Like, so looking for things like that all around. Like for finance, we were using a company for entity management that I audited their bills and I realized that they were charging us more than our agreement had stated they were allowed to. And then we went and confronted them about it. And then they said they were so sorry that they would bill us at the right rate. And then they just continued to bill us at the wrong rate. And then I went even deeper. And then I went into they were like, here's all your entities and they're in good standing. And then I went and checked all the state websites to see if we were actually in good standing. And I found like 6 of them that were revoked, even though their website said we were in good standing. So I was like, I'm going to go find a new vendor for this. Like, why would we keep these guys? And so I spent 2 years looking for one, finding one, and then just writing to my controller, just like, hey, we're still having problems. These guys still are bad to us. Like, come check out this startup. They've solved it with software, not just with paralegals. So like, it's actually works better and it's cheaper. And then the thing was like, I always tell people, be polite, persistent, and don't ever give up, even if you don't get any positive feedback in return. Because I never got an email back from our controller until the day where he was like, you know what? Yes, we want to change. I agree with you, and it's up to you, and you can go with whatever vendor you want. So it's like I was winning him over, even though he wasn't letting me know it. All that time I was writing to him.
I think perseverance is such an underrated skill, and being polite kind of when you're doing it, right? Which is like, hey, I understand my role, I understand my place, but I'm trying to provide value here. Let's just keep moving forward. I also think that your story is not unique in so much of corporate world, in this idea that like there's these companies that overcharge, provide no value, and yet are still constantly just kept on the ledger for reasons that are beyond me. I have no idea. And I think it's just part of one of those things that happens in corporate culture is like, well, we've had them before. It's too difficult to move away from them. So like, we're just going to stick with it. It is what it is. And now we're starting to get into this world where it's not just people like you who are willing to take the time to try to find something better, we also have software that's giving you the ability to kind of make a build versus buy decision that's a little bit different than before. And you then couple that opportunity with people like you, high agency, motivated, and you start getting, I think you really are going to start seeing a lot more change in opportunity. Plus, the whole startup thing for a long time in a corporate was like, I can't risk that. I can't risk it on a startup, right? And now they're starting to say, okay, look, maybe we have to manage them, micromanage them a little bit more, make sure they're doing what they need to do. But there's opportunity there, and we all need to be as productive as possible. And so we need to see what we can do. So I love that story. Okay, so you start just becoming high value, not surprising, doing good things, and you move up within Exos, doing stuff, making more opportunities. How did you get where you are? How long have you been in your current role?
I was promoted to director last cycle, so I guess I will. It's weird. We like do promotions in March, so next March I'll be a year as director. Um, and but what's cool is that during this year I've started branching out to helping other departments. So I wrote like and also started vibe coding over like so maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I was like, look, I've worked with around code enough. Like these models have gotten good enough that I can start scripting for Exos. And and started out like just doing simple automations for my own job. Like for me, things I thought were boring that I knew were patterned. And then was like our COO kind of saw a LinkedIn post about this script I wrote for calendar blocking, syncing calendar blocks, and then asked if I would join a little working group to help operations kind of leverage AI and automations to improve efficiency. So yeah, for a few months I've been working on that, and we have like 4 things we're working on, and I pushed a automation to proposal team recently where, when a new opportunity comes in, they used to have to go and Google Drive and create a folder, and then create 7 or 8 folders inside of that folder, and then copy a bunch of files into it, and then email everyone who was supposed to be involved in the project. And it all was coming from a data sheet. So like I wrote a script, added it to the Google sheet, the Google Apps script, and now when they fill out the 7 rows, they can hit a button, and the folders are made, and the files are copied, and the email goes out to everyone, and the links are all in there. So just like that kind of automating that admin work for them has been really fun, and that's something I did over the summer.
That's really cool. I think one of the things I've been preaching is that I think legal might be, for once, at the direct center of opportunity to make operational change within a company because you sort of touch everything and you have this opportunity to see a lot where others only see portions of things. And so if you have people with skill sets like yours in an operational role, you can really connect things in a way you couldn't before. And so I think that is a great example for people to understand that like legal, if you have the right skill sets, can actually do a whole lot more than just simply review the contract or approve the thing or sign the document or whatever it might be. And so I love that. Let's talk a little AI a little bit, right? I'll just say big AI because I know AI is like, I'm just going to use a generalized term,
Okay.
right? There's LLMs and machine learning and natural language processing, and there's like a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm just going to say AI. I think forever legal has been viewed as this kind of backwater, right? No change, no technology doesn't want to do it. We have an influx of sort of highly skilled builders because there's a lot of money now in legal because in a lot of ways large language models are almost perfect for legal. And so you're seeing an influx of new builds. I feel like a startup has been born every 2 minutes we've been talking, right? And it's really hard to keep track of for people in the world or even technical like you compared to a general counsel or whomever to like have any real idea what the differences are. And so one of the things I like to talk about is, okay, we're at this intersection. AI seems everywhere. What is it good at and what isn't it sort of? And where are you and your team looking to leverage it within your operations?
Yeah, we looked at a lot of vendors from the beginning. Like I was on ChatGPT beta. I was telling my boss like, we got to get this for the department. Like we have to get this. Like this is going to be so important. Like And he was like, oh, well, you start testing it. So I was like testing it with anonymized data
Yeah.
on my personal account and sending him the results and telling him what I was able to pull off and do. And I was also at the same time writing to OpenAI's head of legal operations, begging him to create business terms. Because this is back before they had business terms. And I was like, there's no way with the way your terms are written, like a business is ever going to use this. Like
Yep.
you've got like, isn't the real application here like B2B? Like people can make money with this rather than just figure out what recipe they want to make out of their, chicken. And so we got those terms, and then we had a Teams account immediately. And I mean, we use AI every day for so much. We've written like AI redlining playbooks using a vendor, not just the base model. And that took our RFP process. So the first thing we tackled was RFP because my lawyers didn't like doing the MSA review for RFP because, we don't always win it. And sometimes it feels like a lot of work for nothing. So we took our RFP process from like 6 weeks to like less than 5 days
Wow.
with AI. And like I was just talking to we use a contractor to help us with commercial deals, and she told me the other day, she said your AI playbooks are the most useful of any of my clients. And she's like, so she loves helping me with them. So like we have a standing time where we sit down together and she helps me, she goes through and judges its output and helps me understand where new rules need to get written. So that's been a huge win. You guys can hit me on LinkedIn if you want to hear about what vendor that is.
So you had contract lifecycle management platforms kind of forever that were the thing. They didn't do everything necessarily you wanted. They were kind of a repository home versus really actionable in a lot of ways. And large language models and sort of building on top of them allowed for more productivity or use cases within your contract platform. Things like redlining, right? Like seems standard, opportunity there, how you use it. But even within that, people struggle, right? And so curious as somebody who went through that process and tried to make a decision, how are you kind of weeding out vendors? Like what's real on a demo versus not? How do you go about that process?
So I would say you got a POC all at the same time because of the decision by it. Like if you demo one thing and test it out and then demo another thing and test it out, you're either going to go with the first one or the last one because you're going to kind of forget all the ones in the middle. So what I did was I arranged to do the POC of all of them at the same time, and I ran them. I had, at least at the time I did this, they all would build you a playbook. So I would say, here's my RFPs, here's my MSAs, build me a playbook for this. And then I basically judged them on the playbook they could build for me. And then I blindly delivered that output from the LLM to my team as if it was my work without disclosing that it came from the AI tool, and then judged their reaction to it.
I think that is a fascinating way to go about it and really smart. At the end of the day, you want to both judge what you see, but also the output against something real in the world. And I think that is also part of the problem with a lot of the software implementations that happen is uh, production software is different than demo software. And I don't think a lot of people get that. How much of your own technical background helped in this process? Because I think that's another thing I see a lot of in legal departments is sometimes you get legal teams that lawyers love to think they know everything. And so they think they can do it. They think they can run the RFP. They think they can evaluate versus having somebody who is more technical, maybe not even technically skilled per se, but knows that software stack, understands what's opportunity, what systems requirements matter. So for you, like, what do you think really helped in evaluating beyond looking at the output and how your attorneys valued it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would preface is that having a CLM, and for me, my CLM meant ticketing system, having that set up so I understood the macro understanding of of all of our workload was was key. I wouldn't have had the time or energy to pour into AI if I hadn't set up a Kanban board and a universal ticketing system that linked to my repository and my e-sign. So like, don't skip that. If you're reading this, like, or watching this, like, don't skip that part. Like, it's definitely worth setting up first. And I'd say it's very understanding prompting and understanding how LLMs work and how to get good output out of them was incredibly important in understanding the benefit and how to get the benefit. So I think a lawyer is great at judging the output. You can know what a good red line is. You know a good insertion. You know like a logical surgical delete, like deletion and insert versus like something bloody where you've scrubbed out the whole clause and put in a bad one or a whole new one in a different section that wouldn't be natural to insert it there. Like lawyers are great judges of the redlining, I think, but it's getting that output themselves, which is hard. So it's like making a decision. Like if I'm by a tool that is about self setup, where I am building my playbooks myself, there is a skill I'm going to have to learn, which is how to write those rules. Now, many vendors have gotten much better at bridging that gap. So you're not starting with a blank page where you're starting with some AI generated help from your past work and from some of their special sauce. So the spin up time has greatly improved over the year. It's so much easier to build a playbook today than it was a year ago. But part of that is that I also use base models to do a bunch of other stuff. So I've like been training myself on how to use AI in general to help me with legal work. Like, I mean, sometimes I'll have 15 to 25 conversations with AI a day about the legal work at Exos. And I'm one of a team of 4 full-time and 1 contractor. And we've gotten the whole team on the base models now.
I am a big believer in the worlds colliding, and that also this idea that software is just going to magically do everything for you is either really far away or maybe never going to happen. And, you know, I've been in software and in consulting in a long time, and it's always sort of the laughing joke, which is like, yes, there are reasons implementations don't work, but most of the time it's because the user has not done anything to learn how to use the software and they complain it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And you're like, even like Microsoft Word, right? For like a lawyer, like, how do I do this? I don't know. Did you take any of the learning? Did you ask anybody? And the answer is almost always no. And it seems like we're falling into the same trap again with AI, is like, whether it's the marketing shtick or the rest of it, which is like, you know, 2 years ago, they were like, oh, prompting's going to go away. The models are just going to do it. And now we're like 2 years later and you're like, yeah, so that didn't happen, right? And so I keep trying to preach this idea that it is actually important to learn. And unfortunately, a lot of the offerings out there right now seem to be pretty like high level. Yes, you can go to Google or OpenAI or all the rest of them and they teach you like high level what stuff is. But if you're a product person or a DevOps or something like that, there's like really detailed courses on how to do it. And we don't seem to have as much of it in legal. And I think that is part of why a lot of lawyers don't seem to be using it in its most efficient way. And I'm curious, have your team thought through that? Have you been training your team at all? Like, how have you gone about making sure people can really use it the way it's supposed to be used?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I teach a prompting framework that, like, you know, in the most recent conference at Running Legal Like a Business, you know, we taught it on the main stage. I taught everyone on my team how to do it. Now I'm teaching everyone at Exos, the whole company, on this framework. And it's about building the prompt before you run it. So instead of asking AI for output, you should ask AI for the prompt to get the output. Build the prompt with them and then run the prompt on its own. And that's due to, and there's also like very similar repeatable reasons why people don't get out of AI what they want. And that's only because they don't understand the underlying technical aspects of it, which is the context window and the token limits. Those 2 things are what almost always produce bad output for people. So that's why I was like, one thing is always start a new chat. Like, don't have, like, whenever you're chatting, don't have it go for too long. Like, start it up, and then if you get in the weeds, go start a new one. Ask it to say, hey, give me a summary of this chat so I can start a new one with you. And take that as the first prompt to do a new one. That will help you avoid the context window thing. And token limits is when you don't understand like that you've put too much in, the input is too much, and that it's without you knowing it, the model's summarizing. So it's like parts of what you put in didn't get in there; they just got summarized. And so like you think you have the output you need, but like the details you're searching for just didn't even pass. into the question.
I think it's also, I mean, those are great tips. And part of the underlying technical stuff, people sort of want to glaze over, but I think it's so important. I mean, even things like understanding why tokens get generated in the way they do, right? Or understanding how when you chunk data, right? Especially like in legal, you might be missing key portions because they got chunked in the wrong way, or how an OCR works, or how a vision model operates, or all these things. It's not per se because I want you to become a software developer. It's simply because you can better understand what you want to get out of it and why it might not be giving you what you want. And I think the prompting structure, I think, is a great place to start for anybody because it's really about communication. The better you can communicate what you want in a structured format, the better output you're going to get. And that'll also let you do a lot of repeatable, more programmatic things in how you use AI. And so I love that you've been teaching that to your team and your company because, again, I think this is an important moment in time where the more you learn how to leverage these new tools, I think the better off you're going to be. And so as you have thought about your legal ops team and the company and where things are going, you've focused on some key things that you wanted to tackle first, such as red lines. Have you thought about what's next or how you guys are going to leverage this in a broader standpoint? Again, without getting too technical, you know, there's the chatbot thing right now. You ask for it. There's stuff going on behind, right? What you call agents, or, and again, I'm going to put agents in quotation marks, but like, you know, workflows. Have you started progressing within your ops team how you're going to use these tools?
Yeah, I mean, we just did our like fourth quarter goals, and we've been starting talking about 2026 goals. So there is some stuff in the pipeline that we're going to build. So it's like we went out and we did a buy cycle, right? And we're like we did a test cycle where we used chatbots to figure out everything we can do. There were certain things, limits that we couldn't get it to do. We went and bought stuff to solve those limits. And now that we've had all that understanding, we're like, okay, what can we stitch together? And I always go to my team like, what's taking you out of flow? So again, I work for a human performance team. We always talk about flow and staying in flow state. So I'm always asking my lawyers. My goal is to keep them in flow all day. So it's like, what in your day takes you out of flow, right? Key things are follow up messages about deals, um, tag like storing or tagging or anything to do with my metadata. Like lawyers don't want to do anything to do with their metadata. They want to get a deal done. They want to pat this on the back and they want to move on to the next deal. They don't want to go log any key terms, right? So for me, like I'm moving into like stitching things together kind of stuff. So like we have a system where procurement keeps stuff, and there's certain things in that system that are going to turn into legal tickets. So I'm looking on vibe coding and the API to API connection, and then inserting Gemini and for an interpretation layer. Um, Even improving my CLM without having to ask for it from them. Like we have an email. When we email a ticket in, right? We get the whole body of the email as the body of the ticket, and I want AI to interpret that rather than getting the whole body. So I'm working on an app script to like when a new ticket comes in from that email and their API hits a new ticket from that, it goes and passes it out to Gemini to reinterpret it and then update that field over in my ticketing system. And then also like I'm thinking outside of legal. I'm trying to like connect the tip of the spear of every opportunity down to the RFP process. So trying to take the AI note taker from a sales opportunity and start to synthesize a database of what we know about that opportunity as it progresses to legal, so that I have like something AI can tap into, which is the whole knowledge of Exos about how the opportunity got to contract to help inform the negotiation with the AI redlining. So that's next year.
I love
Like
it.
I don't want to go farther than that.
Yeah, no, and I think the reason I ask is I think part of the place where a lot of people are stuck is they don't exactly know what to do or where to go. And so I like talking about just general ideas, especially ones that are a little bit more outside the box, to remind people that there's opportunities to connect disparate data points and ops and people in ways you just couldn't before. And I think that there's some really cool stuff you can do if you're willing to try. And on that part of it. We've talked about OpenAI. You just mentioned Gemini. One of the things I've been talking about also is just this idea that like it's still early days. Every technology has different benefits, pros and cons. Gemini is good at some things. OpenAI's models are good at other things. There's local models. There's all kinds of stuff to do. And so the big thing is just try and find people like Gabe that can connect those ideas back and forth. And so another question I would just generally ask for you is like, is this where you think legal ops professionals should really spend their time? Lawyers should spend their time? Is learning more of the systemic pieces of how these things work? Where is their time best spent over the next, 6 months, right?
I guess there's some subjective nature to that question based off of like what your individual priorities are.
Sure.
But understanding the future of computing is not going to make your life worse or harder ever as computers become more and more part of thought work. So there's no downside to getting better at prompting. There's no downside to accessing all of human intelligence at your fingertips. Like, there's ways you can use AI to make you dumber, right? You can just create work slop and never review it and never read it and just and push it out. Like, or you can learn anything you want by just asking. Like, I feel blessed to be alive right now. I feel blessed that every day in my pocket, like I used to have to go to an accountant and spend $1,200. Like, my father-in-law came over and he was like, "Hey, I don't understand my tax reforms." And I was able to say, "Hey, ChatGPT, and the 1040 EZ, like box 16, they said there's a worksheet. Like, and here's my taxpayers' total income. And they calculated the worksheet for me, put it right in there. Like, send me the instructions so I could go learn them if I want." Like, the fact that you have that at your fingertips is amazing. Like, 5 years ago, I would not have been able to pull that off. It would have taken me 5, 10 times longer. I would have Googled it and gone to the link and read it and tried to find the worksheet. And maybe it wasn't published and I found 2023's worksheet and I would put in the wrong number. And then, like, I feel blessed. Like, and yes, I think if a lawyer's willing, I've got a great example of this. My friend Anna Gyo, right? A year and a half ago, she first posted on LinkedIn and she talked about how afraid she was of being like replaced by AI. And I was like, look, like, it's not a crazy fear. Like, when at CaseKey, we automated away 100 paralegal jobs by like doing this evidence scraping and like being able to find a bunch of key terms inside of a huge data set that paralegals used to read through. I was like, so like certain parts of the job will evolve away, right? But new parts of the job will be born. So I was like, don't be afraid, but like, if you want to be a master of your craft, like, learn it now. And she has completely redefined who she is. Like, she is one of the leaders in evaluating legal AI. Like, she reinvented herself in a year and a half. So like, should you learn about it? Should you care about it? Like, I think, yeah.
It's always hard for me to sort of fathom why people don't do things that seem obvious, but there's an entire consulting industry based on the idea that people don't like change. So,
Yeah.
there is that. I love that. This has been an awesome conversation, Gabe. I know we could probably talk for hours about lots of different things. As I close out these shows, I always like to ask my guests, is there something actionable that you'd like the audience to take away from listening to you today?
Yeah, I mean, I would challenge everybody to, if they have a question that they don't know the answer to go ask a model what the answer is. And to build a habit, maybe set a timer on their phone, or even if they don't have time to do it all the time, keep a log of the things you couldn't solve or were curious about. And then when that alarm goes off, go ask a model about it. Like, you will learn something. It will find you the best dentist. It will find you like where you can get the most affordable root canal. It will find you the best immigration attorney that speaks Korean that's within 5 miles of your house. Like, all those things that you want to try to find that have to do with knowledge, like, it's a fundamentally better way to find and synthesize data than the search and read.
I couldn't have said it better to close out this day. That is a phenomenal, actionable item to go out and do. And for whether you're in legal or not, I think we're at a moment in time where sitting by and just waiting and not trying is fundamentally not a good choice. And I don't mean that from a, if you don't use AI, you're going to lose your job. No, none of that crap. Just fundamentally go learn. There's just this huge opportunity out there to improve your own opportunity in critical thinking. It's hard for me to understand why nobody would be willing to do that. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Gabriel Saunders. And like I still am a small enough deal that I'm able to talk to everyone that writes me. So I probably help consult a couple people every week who have questions, concerns, want to bounce things off me. Sometimes I'll sit down with them and help them just start vibe coding. Like the first time they're scared to do it, and I'll just help them with the first few prompts, and they'll realize that everyone can do it.
I
So
love that. I think we're in this age where community is maybe going to be as important as ever. And we lost some of that with COVID and the rest of it. And so I always try to remind people that if you can get out there, just ask. There's so many kind people out there like you, Gabe, who are frankly willing to take a little bit of the time to just have a conversation and help out. So don't be afraid. Thank you again for being on the show today, and I can't wait till we talk next time.
I'm so grateful you invited me. Thank you so much.
If you want to continue building your entrepreneurial mindset and enjoy our content, we would love for you to subscribe, hit the bell, follow along. You can also find us on our Substack, PossibLaw. Abrazos!